Alexein. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance, by Naki. A new episode every day. Episode 11, Part 1.
Athena, Kingdom of Epirus. The spring of Epirus bore no resemblance to the radiant seasons of the Greek heartland. In March, howling winds from the jagged peaks of the Pindus Mountains brought a freezing rain that lashed the raw stone walls of Passarin, tearing away the wild anemones blooming in the courtyard. The air hung thick with the scent of damp earth and the sharp aroma of the ancient beech forests of Dodona, where Zeus the Thunderer was said to dwell. This harsh, rugged terrain was the perfect physical manifestation of its people, the Molossian warriors. Fierce and unyielding, these high-altitude fighters were renowned throughout the world as an elite force that would never retreat a single step. Yet, despite its martial pride, the kingdom gasped on the brink of chronic ruin. Fractured internally by deadly, fratricidal feuds over the throne, Epirus lacked the treasury to sustain endless campaigns and lay constantly exposed to the vicious raids of the barbarian Illyrians. Yet, deep within its womb, this unrefined backwater hid a supreme currency that no empire could devalue. The legitimate royal bloodline of the Aeacid dynasty, transmitted in an unbroken line from Neoptolemus, son of the immortal Achilles. This mythical lineage possessed an overwhelming political value, a sacred crown capable of summoning the formidable armies of the outside world to act as Epirus's protective shield. It was this high-stakes geopolitical reality that dictated the demanding destiny imposed upon the Princess Polyxena, who was only 7 years old. The Greeks and Macedonians found accessing this wild abyss absurdly difficult. The Pindus Range stood as a colossal iron barrier carved by the earth, acting as a natural fortress that sequestered Epirus from the outside world. Any overland assault launched from the east had to traverse the exposed highways of Thessaly, leaving the western borders of the kingdom as an inviolable sanctuary, untouched by the glance of a Greek bronze blade. This geographic isolation pointed to a single unyielding truth. Though forcibly torn apart by a mass of immense mountains, the fractured kingdoms of Epirus and Macedonia were waiting in the deep darkness for the appointed hour of a political marriage, an alliance destined to fuse their separate fates into a single formidable power. At the heart of Epirus, within the war council chamber hidden deep inside the royal palace, a low, smoking oil lamp cast long, shifting shadows of deep conspiracy across an array of geopolitical maps and scrolls scattered over a massive oak table. This was an absolute sanctuary for men, a place where fierce ambition, cold strategy, and raw, harsh realities collided. The air in the room was entirely overpowered by the dense scent of aged parchment, the breath of weathered leather, and the faint metallic tang of bronze weapons. At the head of the heavy table sat King Neoptolemus I. His face bore the stark, deep lines of exhaustion unique to a man who, while still a boy, had been forced to seize a heavy crown and shoulder the burdens of a nation. Born into the legendary house of Aeacus, the blood of the immortal hero Achilles pulsed through his veins. This mythic heritage was his supreme blessing, but it was also a crushing curse that threatened to suffocate him. Directly beside him stood his most trusted commander, General Lycomedes. His posture and every movement betrayed the reality of a seasoned veteran who had spent his entire life alongside the lethal tip of a long spear. The wear on his leather armor spoke with silent, absolute power of his unyielding loyalty to his sovereign. The map of severe battle scars crossing his face stood as a constant reminder to everyone in the room of the gruesome price a man must pay with his own flesh to wield the ultimate weapon of power. Seated directly across from them was Queen Andromache. She was an imposing intellect, possessed of a silent, unyielding resilience and a razor-sharp eye for political analysis. While she never suffered from the vanity of flaunting her intellect during the routine handling of military matters, her towering presence alone radiated an undeniable gravity that commanded and focused the minds of all present. She was currently carrying a new, legitimate heir of the royal bloodline. Though her pregnancy was only approaching its midway point at barely 5 months, her abdomen already swelled noticeably beneath layers of heavy fabric. a sphere radiating a gentle warmth that held the entire future of this rugged mountain kingdom. The faint, smooth pallor of her skin and her occasional heavy sighs were raw proof of the toll this quickening took. Within the depths of her womb, she was perfectly fashioning a definitive new life. Whether a prince or a princess, this unknown child was destined to become the future ruler of the realm. Into this austere war room, entirely dominated by the cruel martial energy of men, stepped his 7-year-old younger daughter, Polyxena. Her appearance instantly shattered and reversed the grim geopolitical tension hanging over the hall. She marched with high elegance, bearing the precise disposition of an absolute goddess who had cleaved through the pitch-black darkness to descend upon the earth. The true meaning of the supreme name Polyxena derived from the ancient Greek words polys, meaning many, and xenos, meaning guests or foreigners, signifying a remarkably noble and bountiful master of grand hospitality. It was a title drawn directly from the lineage of the noble daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba, who had famously become a tragic, blood-stained sacrifice on the battlefields of Troy. For the young princess of Epirus, bearing the strict framework of the name Polyxena was a formula of destiny. It instantly bound her entire existence to the ancient sacred virtue of hospitality and placed her squarely beneath the core of the most intense and dramatic epic in all of Greek mythology. This girl, who would later marry into Macedonia and etch the name Olympias into the annals of history, possessed eyes that, at just 7 years old, had completely lost the innocence typical of an ordinary child. The young body of Polyxena was outfitted in a miniature set of Athena's armor, crafted by a master artisan with exquisite detail. This harness was the material reflection of the girl's profound devotion to the goddess of wisdom and military strategy, the deity her 7-year-old mind placed above all else. The large helmet dominating her head was a flawless work of craftsmanship, an adult's crested helm scaled down with absolute precision. Catching the faint flickering light of the oil lamp, it gleamed with a brilliant white radiance, while the heavy crest of horsehair cast a soft, dark shadow over her smooth forehead. A simple tunic, dyed in the deepest black, was bound tightly around her waist by a slender cord. In her small, taut hands, she held a round bronze shield. On its surface, the terrifying face of the Gorgon Medusa was vividly painted in vibrant green and dark oils, the mass of snaking hair given a lifelike quality as if ready to crawl. In her right hand, she firmly gripped a scaled-down long spear. It was no cheap toy, but a steadfast symbol of her inner resolve. For Polyxena, this march in full armor was no mere game of make-believe, but a solemn ritual born from the depths of her being. Following close behind her, into the room, was her elder sister Troas. Troas translated literally to the woman of Troy, or the absolute spirit of Troy. It was the very name the Greeks used to denote the vast region surrounding the legendary city, the Troad. The royal house of Epirus proudly traced its lineage back to the immortal heroes who fought in the Trojan War, and this supreme mythic heritage constantly projected an overwhelming political authority over the minds of the entire Greek world. Polyxena, wait! You must not interrupt the adults. To the men occupying the space around the large table, the arrival of a 7-year-old playing the part of Athena was nothing more than a passing amusement. A brief distraction that interrupted their war council for a single moment. However, the harsh mask instantly melted from the face of her strict father. A rare, genuine smile of fatherly bliss appeared at the corners of the king's lips. "Ha! What a remarkably fierce and lovely spirit you possess, my daughter." "King Neoptolemus," I cried out, standing up from his high seat. "So, you have finally transformed yourself into the goddess Athena herself." "I am Athena," Polyxena declared. Her 7-year-old voice rang through the hall, vibrating with a crisp conviction that commanded the room. Queen Andromache rose gracefully and walked to her daughter. With a refined touch of her slender fingers, she gently brushed away a stray lock of hair that fell across Polyxena's face. "And this little goddess of mine carries a grand purpose more magnificent than anything else on earth," the queen murmured, her voice dropping to a soft whisper as a faint smile touched her lips. "Tell me, my little sovereign, what absolute decree do you intend to deliver to your father's council by descending into this sanctuary?" The old general, Lycomedes, let out a low rumble of laughter from deep within his chest, the lines of his seasoned warrior's face softening. "My king, it appears a completely new strategist has personally descended into our council. Perhaps the sharp intelligence within this girl will become the ultimate weapon to protect our borders from the barbarian Illyrians." Polyxena's gaze remained intensely locked, without a single moment of distraction, directly into the depths of her father's eyes. "I know the story, father," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Athena is the smartest goddess because she was born directly from the mind of Zeus, and she was already wearing her armor. She doesn't fight like Ares, who just likes shouting and hitting things with brute force. Athena fights with clever plans and perfect logic. She thinks ahead, just like her brother Apollo sees the future. Her spear is only for protecting her people, and she never wastes her strength on reckless mistakes." Her father listened intently to her discourse, feeling a surge of immense pride welling deep within his chest. He saw clearly that Polyxena was using the vast concept of the goddess to internalize the vision of a ruler, a role she would one day manifest upon the earth. She already understood that true dominance did not spring from raw physical force, but from a supreme intelligence capable of outthinking the enemy and securing victory before a single sword was drawn. The shield of Medusa she held proclaimed, with silent force, the power of an unyielding defensive wall that merged devastating capability with refined intellect to protect her people forever. "Why do you love the path of the goddess Athena so much, my little warrior princess?" her father asked, his eyes gleaming with affection and fascination. "Because she is a truly strong woman," Polyxena declared, her face filled with a razor-sharp conviction. "When her home is in danger, she is a fierce warrior who never runs away from a battle. But she also gives her people the best wisdom and a shield to keep them safe. She is the real queen at the top of her city, and she uses her spear only to protect her subjects. I want to be just like her. I was born from the blood of a king, and even if I am still just a little girl, I have decided that I will look after all the people of Epirus as Athena herself." Every line of sternness vanished from the king's face, replaced by a radiant smile of immense pride. "This is truly my daughter, the very blood of Aeacus. Neoptolemus I proclaimed. My physical form means I can never be crowned as a king," she continued, her words hardening like an unyielding decree. "But I can rule perfectly upon this earth as a queen. Not a weak queen who just sits on a throne to look pretty, but a true sovereign like Athena, someone with a mastermind for big strategies, who protects and commands her people forever. And you already possess the heart of an absolute queen within your chest," her mother, Andromache, added, her eyes shining with intense emotion. In the next instant, her father's expression shifted, taking on the severe weight of ultimate geopolitical responsibility. "If you ever wish to stand alongside the future master of the world, and claim the status of a truly great queen, Polyxena, it is not enough to remain a submissive wife. You must harbor a razor-sharp intellect and a wisdom that sees far into the future. You must embed the geometry of foresight within your very flesh, allowing you to dominate every web of conspiracy within your future husband's court and high councils. This will be your most demanding challenge, because the weak men of the outside world will look at you and see only a fragile girl, constantly underestimating your true capability." "I am fully aware of this, father," Polyxena replied, her gray eyes never wavering from her father's for a single moment. "I have watched mother my whole life," she said softly. "She stands right next to you, but she keeps her power quiet, hiding in the shadows where no one can hurt her. You are the bright light everyone sees in the court, but it is her silent, clever mind that helps you rule perfectly. A real queen's power is invisible. She is the anchor that stops the kingdom from breaking apart by watching all the secret traps in the dark." For a moment, King Neoptolemus and General Lycomedes find their intellects utterly struck with awe, leaving the hall locked in a breathless silence. Finally, the king broke the quiet, a remarkably gentle smile appearing at the corners of his lips. "My princess, your formula is perfectly and completely the truth. The power that protects and maintains order beneath this entire court is an invisible sovereignty that no ordinary man can ever fathom. Without her as an immortal foundation, it would have been utterly impossible for me to rule as a monarch upon this earth. Then, Father, teach me that grand strategy of Athena, Polyxena said, her voice filled with a solemn hunger to learn. What must I do to make my mind that strong? Teach me. Everything is born from the operation of this single board, King Neoptolemus I replied. He gestured with his powerful arm toward a polished wooden board resting upon the large table before them. Before them stood a meticulously carved set of petteia, a war game of mathematical strategy, defined by a grid of absolute boundaries. Upon it sat simple pebbles dyed in black and crimson oils, representing the forces of two opposing armies, arranged like a divine equation. The flickering light of the oil lamp cast long, heavy shadows from the pieces, exposing the vast geopolitical map of war and destiny that the girl's intellect was to analyze and master. The king slid one of his simple pebbles forward along the geometric lines. This board, Polyxena, is the cold and absolute microcosm of the very world we face. Each of these pieces represents our armies marching across the land, or the fortified city-states we possess. He placed his finger firmly over the neatly aligned rows of stones. At first glance, the physical mass of these pieces suggests they possess only an ordinary, identical value. However, if a supreme intelligence infuses them with absolute strategy, these fragments are elevated into invincible weapons, capable of subduing the world. The ultimate objective you must execute is simply this: to completely flank and trap the enemy's pieces, capturing them between the lines of your own forces. Troas stepped closer, watching the board with intense concentration, and spoke in a hushed whisper. Then, for one who wishes to secure total dominance in this conflict, the goal is not to blindly pursue raw physical strength on the battlefield, but simply to possess the most brilliant strategic mind in the world. You have hit the mark precisely, General Lycomedes rumbled softly, nodding his scarred face in firm approval. You may leave raw physical might to the mud of the battlefield, where common soldiers simply slam their shields together with brute force. But the sharp intellect that instantly spins swift strategies is the supreme authority that issues absolute decrees from the depths of this war room. The functional beauty of this game proves that absolute truth with silent, undeniable power. Then, physical strength holds no value within the formula for seizing total victory, Polyxena observed, her eyes remaining fixed entirely on the geometric grid of the board without a single moment of distraction. The absolute driving force within this game is nothing other than the power of foresight and the cold, mathematical formulas of grand strategy, her father affirmed, elevating the logic into an immutable law. This is the ultimate training tool that the greatest philosophers of the world, like Plato, place above all else in their academies to thoroughly teach the depths of strategic thought to young minds. They compare the plight of an unfortunate soul who possesses no sovereign city-state of their own to a single isolated pebble on this board, completely surrounded and blockaded from all sides, stripped of any purposeful movement. Neoptolemus swiftly moved his piece once more, instantly creating a remarkably complex and lethal encirclement on the board. Now, Polyxena, use your awakened intellect to analyze the shifting formula of destiny playing out beneath this board. This piece of mine now stands in an absolute position to completely seize every single one of your stones on the next move. Tell me, what geometric angle will you deploy to counter this absolute assault? Polyxena's smooth, youthful brow furrowed in a state of intense concentration. In her sharp gaze, she was by no means looking at the arrangement of wooden pieces as a passive observer. Deep within her intellect, she was swiftly reverse engineering and seeing through the entire structure of a future history that had not yet manifested upon the earth. A myriad of strategic variations flashed and swirled within her precocious mind. Her father was not merely entertaining his daughter with a simple game, he was using a demanding forge to fashion the absolute intellect of a supreme queen from nothing. He was thoroughly rejecting a life of vanity spent among beautiful furnishings, beating into her flesh the ability to analyze and rule the world as a raw, blood-stained battlefield, where every single action and decree of the High Council would inevitably leave an impact upon the earth. She smoothly moved a piece forward. It was no timid defensive retreat to escape the trap. Rather, it was a lethal, absolute counteroffensive that instantly manifested a completely unexpected counter-encirclement on the board, a move her father had not anticipated in the slightest. A thin smile appeared at the corners of Neoptolemus I's lips. It was a reflection of absolute silent wonder at the fact that his daughter had completely transcended a child's game, scanning and executing the absolute mathematical formulas required to seize total victory. Polyxena, the young princess of Epirus, was an extraordinary force, harboring a brilliant intellect capable of dissecting the underlying logic of all things. Paired with a fierce geopolitical ambition, destined to shatter the peace of the Greek states. Within the depths of this wild, isolated kingdom enclosed by massive mountains, the wartime princess had coldly forged her unique and immortal destiny. To march proudly alongside the absolute ruler who would one day ascend to the apex of all Greece, seizing and commanding the entire world. The foundation of her immortal destiny was bound by an unbreakable thread to her ultimate counterpart, the destiny of Philip II of Macedonia. One day, that man would claim her and bring her into his court. Within that sanctuary, the girl named Polyxena would completely transform into Olympias, the absolute queen of Macedonia, and the supreme mother destined to give birth to the immortal conqueror, Alexander the Great. At this moment, the young princess had not yet laid eyes on the Iron Prince of the North. Far away, separated by a vast distance, that boy was currently undergoing his own rigorous training within the depths of the great Theban engine, thoroughly absorbing the grand wisdom of statecraft. Yet, the seeds of their destiny, the swift strategies that would fuse their colossal ambitions into a single monster, melting their two kingdoms into one, had already been deeply sown in the darkness. They remained entirely unaware of how their immense willpower would align under a perfect formula. Yet, the manifestation of their destined intersection would inevitably give flesh to Polyxena's absolute prophecy. For within the shifting shadows of the room, she envisioned her ultimate truth, that she would be crowned as the absolute Queen Olympias, and from her immortal bloodline, the entire mythic universe of Alexander would be born into the world.
To be continued. A Great Argead Saga. Alexein. Volume 1. Telesias. The War Single Day. We are dropping a new episode every day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 5 to 15-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, perfect for your daily plunge into antiquity. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below.